Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of having my friend. You might know him from FanSidedMMA. You might know him from Empty the Bench and a litany of other MMA periodicals. He is the one and only Thomas Albano. Thomas, what's going on, my brother?
Hello. I'm doing well today, sir. How are you?
Good. For a sir, I'm not that old, no matter what my gray hair on my beard say. But we're friends, bro. Like, that's it, man. But how are you? How's everything?
I'm doing all right. Here in New York, we're preparing for yet another snowstorm. It seems like a snowstorm is happening every other day here. Needless to say, I hope everybody else in the other states who are dealing with their problems, with the snow and everything. It's insane.
Everywhere is crappy everywhere, pretty
It's
much.
weird. It's like this is not a winter wonderland anymore.
But what was it? I mean, maybe this is me and like my mom being from Fiji, but like I don't like right now. It's 50 some odd in LA. That is way too cold for me. I've got like 2 layers of clothes. That would probably be walking in your summer shorts. 53 right now.
As that my brother is the kind that like it'll be like so cold out, but he'll be in like shorts and everything. I'll just look at him like, why?
But some people, the different blood. Everybody uses that euphemism when it's cool, warm-blooded male, hot-blooded female, or whatever. But this is where it actually counts.
Yep.
But yeah, man. But dude, I mean, you are a laureate of all things MMA. But I mean, how did it all start for you?
I was gonna say, okay, do you want the I guess the journalism side first would make sense before getting into MMA. Okay, so like many a youth male across this great nation, when I was young, I wanted to be an athlete. The problem was I wasn't very good at sports. Yeah, you can relate. You see, you can relate. So like I played baseball for like 8 years. I did bowling for a few years. I did basketball for a year, and I don't want to remember that. And above all else, there was a span of like a few years when I was younger, and then from 8th grade onwards till like I want to say maybe 2008 till around 2014ish when I was in the middle of college. I was a martial artist. I did karate. I'm actually a first degree black belt in Goju-ryu, one of the Okinawan forms of karate. So basically, yeah, I was gonna say. So around this time, everyone's talking about like the fight experience. Should MMA media fight experience? Well, I mean, I have some credentials. I don't have fight experience, but so yeah, I grew up with all those sports, and growing up, I figured out around maybe middle school, I was a pretty good writer, more than my peers, and it's weird. It's like as time went on, like it seems like my writing talent stood out more and more. So it just seemed like math, like putting 2 and 2 together. Hey, I like sports, I like writing. Let's try to give that a shot. Which is funny because when I first got attracted to this industry, it was stuff like radio, television, the stuff we're doing now. And it's like, while I have that as like a love, like writing was always, my thing. It was my talent. It was my niche. When in high school, college, like everyone knew me as the writer. So yeah, so basically that's how I led myself into the journalism field and the sports field. MMA though, I was a fan of MMA growing up. I was actually a big fan of WWE when I was younger. like really massive. Yep, I'd say I'm still a
That's why we're
professional.
friends. That's why we're friends, Tom. That's why we're
I feel a
friends.
connection. I feel a connection. The connection should be playing out live here on YouTube and on Facebook Live. But basically, I was big into that. So, I would always TiVo like Monday Night Raw. And then it's like, if I ever fell asleep, I would watch it after school the next day. And around 2005, there was this little show that started premiering around the start of 2005. If you remember, after Monday Night Raw, called The Ultimate Fighter.
Yes.
So
yes, sir.
every day, the next day after school, I would record The Ultimate Fighter and I would watch it, and just like my dad was big into the UFCs of like the older days when it was promoted as No Holds Barred, and I knew of the UFC. I had familiar with names like Randy and Tito and Chuck, and the Pride Fighting Championship. I didn't know much about, but I did always see the commercials for it on DirecTV and stuff. But like the Ultimate Fighter, that first season, that was like, I really got to know the fighters. I got to start to understand more and more. And it's like, as that season went on, you saw those cast of characters like Chris Lieben, Diego Sanchez, Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner, Kenny Florian.
Mm-hmm.
I would get more and more into it. And it's like, and then I went from watching The Ultimate Fighter to watching all the Spike TV specials. And yeah, basically it's weird. I would watch all the Spike TV specials and all the, I guess it would be Versus around the time 2010
Yes.
came along, and FX. I never really ordered a pay-per-view event though, and it was only on occasion until like, my first pay-per-view, I should clarify, was 2010. I'd say if we're talking about, professional wrestling, UFC and stuff, I think it's obvious. Brock Lesnar, Shane Carwin was my first
Mhm.
UFC pay-per-view. Unbelievable card. And then, the next time I ordered was the next year. John Jones's first title defense against Rampage. And it's like basically I started very slow, and then I just took into the UFC world. I started now. It's like now I'm a hardcore. Now I'm ordering every pay-per-view. I'm looking up prospects and everything. But how I got into the media side was funny. So it was in the summer between undergrad and grad school. So around that time, I was doing a couple of internships, and I actually got an email, I think, from this writing place. I'm not sure if you've seen them around in the in the MMA Twitterverse, Fight Sports.
Yes.
And basically, they had contacted me. They were restarting their website around 2016, and basically they called on me and a few others to be writers for it and basically help with the website, do live event coverage, all that. So I was doing like, it got to a point where basically every Saturday I was doing boxing, MMA, kickboxing. Like I was doing the news stories for the sites. And then I would sometimes be covering like 2, 3, 4 cards in one day, maybe even simultaneously. Like I would have UFC on my TV, and then on this tablet here that I have, I would have the boxing card on. Like it was basically doing a lot of flexibility. And so yeah, that's basically how I got my start. It was weird. It was just an offer out of the blue. It's like I always thought I was going to be a baseball commentator, and there was, for my senior year of undergrad, I was a baseball commentator. But for whatever reason, it was like I never thought that I would be doing something connected to like the pro wrestling or the MMA world, the combat sport world. And it's like all of a sudden one day just getting an offer out of the blue. And yeah, here we are. Was it 2021? Yeah, so almost 5 years exactly later. And I'm still doing this.
Your career as long as Booker T has championships. 5-time. Just saying, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Five. It's crazy to think that almost 5 years ago, it's going to be like 4 or 5 months now. I'm looking at the date on my computer screen. It's 4 or 5 months from now. It's going to be marked my 5-year anniversary in combat sports. And it's kind of crazy how much times have changed in combat sports from like 2016 to 2021. I mean, I remember when we had crowds and we had all these big things, and now we're in the COVID era. I never thought that I would be I never thought I would come the day where every event that I would cover would be an empty audience, and well, here we are.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. And even just going back, to covering the sport during that time, because I started right around the same point. And I remember I would just shoot things on my phone because a lot of times I didn't have credentials. Some of the times, hey, the referees would sneak me in, right? Like, I mean, that's it. I mean, I just started covering MMA, I mean, like amateur cards here in California, then, regional pro cards and whatever. And that's how I would get in. It's like, hey, just come here, right? And I didn't have a crew. I didn't have, I mean, one of the reasons why I go live is because I don't like editing. I just, not a fan. Right?
I feel you. I feel you.
Right? So StreamYard is a like mana from heaven for me. I mean, it's crazy, right? But people would make fun of me for using the phone. Oh, Tom, would you care to tell people the last scrum that you're around, how many actual the cameras and everything were about versus people that actually use their phones?
I was gonna say it's funny because like around the time maybe that we had started. I mean, not even around the time we started. I'd say around the time maybe I started college, like back in 2012. It's like shooting with the phone, like was still becoming a new thing.
Yeah.
Like it's so weird to think how much technology has like changed because like almost everybody now is shooting with these things. And it's like, even though there's like the professional cameras and everything, like there will be people who will be shooting with these things. And honestly, it's pretty acceptable, especially if you're just starting in this industry, especially if you're just starting. Because, I mean, I haven't had too many scrum opportunities or live opportunities, but, I remember going to UFC 244 Ultimate Media Day with Amy Kaplan, the editor of FanSidedMMA, a good friend of yours, actually, too.
Yes, my baby, Scrappy Cappy, as I like to call her. And there's an inner joke between her, me, and Heinrich Wassmer, where she gets that nickname. I mean, that was it. I can't even remember, but again, Scrappy Cappy has always stuck, and it will forevermore. And when she was on this very podcast, she actually had that as her title. And so I was like, that's so great.
That's cute. Yeah. But yeah, definitely, like going there and just having that rush. And it's like, using this as like my microphone. So that way I could like freaking transcribe everything, get into articles. Like that rush felt so great. I mean, the only other time that I remember having a credential for something was that UFC 244 press conference on like the dock, where basically it was like it was one of the peers or whatever. And like, I remember being there and it was like, it was fun to be there. It was, an experience that I had never done anything live. And I was asking questions to Dana White and George Masvidal and Nate Diaz. So I got this like weird thrill in me, but I mean, I remember how negatively that conference was received, and I can kind of agree. Do you remember how there was this guy who basically asked Nate, how can you be the BMF if you're a vegan? He was a few seats next to me. I just remember looking at him like, why the hell did you answer that? Why the hell did you ask that question?
Yeah. And that's the thing too, right? It's like, love Ariel, love Luke Thomas, but I like at times they stir shit that makes it harder for the rest of us guys, girls, transgender, whatever you want to identify. But coming up, cutting our teeth in the game, it's just like now, like media or podcasters or whatever are pariah because of that dumb question that you asked. Thank you for screwing it up for the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I say sometimes in this field it can be just absolutely rough. Like you may be the hardest worker, you may not do anything to ruffle anyone's feathers, but like just seeing the negativity kind of sucks. Especially because like I am not a conflict kind of person. I don't confront. I don't like any of that. Like if I have to for a journalism job to like get a question, get an answer out of somebody, I will. But I'm not going to go in anybody's. Like, if I don't have to get in anybody's face, I'm not going to get in anybody's face. I'm not that kind of person.
Pacifism, that's still a thing, and it's not bad. Which I gotta ask, right? Alex Ramirez has a great question. And do you agree with Cub Swanson that MMA journalists should have at least 3 fights minimum before pursuing a career as a journalist covering the sport?
I don't think you need to. I mean, you know who one of my favorite people, I look up to, because I still look up to people in this industry. Let's
Yeah,
face it. Yeah, I know
always.
there's people better than me and everything. You know who's one of the people I look up to and I think does the best job out of everybody?
Who?
A certain Canadian MMA journalist named James Lynch.
Yes.
He
Oh, yeah.
as I
I
say,
love it.
he was a journalist, and he got his degrees and everything, and he actually put out a good video the other day. It's like, you know uh, the fact that how much we put into being, like getting into this industry and everything, and the fact that fighters and how much they go through the time they're away with their families and everything. I think there needs to be a respect between each, like between that relationship. But do you need fights to be a journalist? I don't think. I'll say it doesn't hurt. First of all, I'll say it doesn't hurt. I mean, like I said, I did martial arts for a total of like 8 years combined. 8, 9, nearly a decade combined. More so on the latter side. Like I said, between 2008, 2014. But I was never doing amateur fights. I had a friend there who did do amateur fights, a couple amateur fights, a couple of the Golden Gloves boxing tournament. And it was good for me to see, and I got to see the process and everything. But do you necessarily have to go through it? Again, it doesn't hurt. It can only benefit you. But is it necessary? I don't think so. And I would say on the side of a little more aggressive kind of answer, I do agree with the theory of, I mean, Dana White and company probably want that because it limits their pool of journalists who can, you know, be there. But to say that, I think maybe sometimes we need to respect what the fighters go through. Like I said, I think there has to be that respect that goes both ways. But I don't think it's necessary to be a fighter, to have fights and be an MMA journalist. No.
So here's my take, right? And there's two great examples of why Cub might not be right in his assessment. Great fighter, poor tweaks, and this is why. Because you ever heard of Spencer Lazar?
Hmm?
Yeah, Spencer Lazar was literally the first. Proud to call him a friend, but he was literally the first MMA-based YouTube channel that I subscribed to back in like '06. I mean, I want to say it's like '07, 2010-ish, right? That was the first, right? And he knocked out a dude in Tough Enough, right? Now, yes, it was only an amateur fight, but he had one fight and retired. But some of the way that he KO'd his opponent of that night, I mean, there are guys and girls literally in all of the major promotions, regional, pro, whatever, that would pray and eat their Wheaties for a knockout like that Spencer Lazar. Now, Cub Swanson, who has had interviews with Spencer Lazar, well, wait, I mean, he's had one fight. He KO'd. He finished where a lot of pro and amateurs found. There you go, right? So
Right.
there's that. So
I was sorry to interrupt, but I also think, because you mentioned the KO, I think that's also a thing. I guess some of us kind of know, what you're risking when you go into that cage, and maybe we don't want to risk our long-term health, even if it's getting knocked out, like 3 times. It's like, I don't think that's worth a risk, to require, us to be MMA media. Now, I think also there's also alternatives. I don't think you have to have a fight, but there's kickboxing and karate tournaments. There's jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Yeah.
There's, I'd say all the different styles. There's, I said karate tournaments. There's judo tournaments.
Right.
Like I'd say, I think those could be acceptable alternatives. I don't think you're required to have fights.
Right. And here's the other thing. Do you know who I think is absolutely talented in what she does, that happens to be employed by the UFC, one Kenda Perez? Have you heard of Kenda Perez?
Yes.
Okay. She has not had any fights. Do you know what Kenda Perez is doing in addition to all of the stuff that she does with the UFC?
Explain.
Oh, she's Cub Swanson's wife. So again, Cub, are you checking your wife because she hasn't had any fights?
Wow.
I'm just saying. I mean, and again, a large part of the Swanson household has, income has come from the UFC. Half of it is Cubs, half of it is Kenda's. So again, and again, she is talented at her job. Megan O'Leary is
I was
tremendous.
just gonna say Megan O'Leary.
Megan O'Leary. I mean,
she doesn't have any fights as far as I know.
Karen Bryant is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, like amazing, right? And there's Lauren Sanko. She's had fights, yes, of
Right.
course.
I was say, but you don't. I was gonna say, but I think Karen Bryant and Megan O'Leary are proof that you don't need to be a Lauren Sanko. You don't need to have those fights to be considered a great, whether it's a journalist or whether it's, an analyst or a play-by-play person for the UFC.
Yes, exactly. So that's the thing. And the other thing about it is if you're incurring damage and, to your brain, to your body, and what have you, like, how good are you going to be forming sentences? Because we've seen it where it doesn't look good. Would you want, Diego Sanchez interviewing fighters?
Like I just said, for some of us can be talented. I would say I think that Megan O'Leary and Karen Bryant are proof that you can be talented, and you don't need to risk your long-term health to be a great journalist or a great reporter, a great play-by-play commentator person in the sport.
No, 1,000%. So I mean, a Cub can have his opinions. That's it. I kind of refute some of it, and I knew it came from an angry place. But also, it's situations. Think about in Cub's career, how many journalists or whatever trying to stir the pot essentially and goad him into whatever, and then taking his words out of context, what he said out of context, and that's his Cub. Think about Conor McGregor. Think about all of the people. So I get it where, you're gun shy about trusting this particular media person or journalist. That's why I have pretty much resigned the fact that I'm not a journalist at all. I'm an interviewer and podcaster, right? And you can apply that to wrestling. You could apply that to MMA. You can apply that to music, whatever. Like when I was loving, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler and whatever, I was watching Matt Pinfield do his thing on VH1. So I'm just,
I was gonna say, you don't need to be a journalist to be an MMA media person. I'd say you don't need the hard hitting stories, I'd say like the investigative pieces like Bloody Elbow does. Like you can, be somebody, like I tend not to do too much of that. Like I'd say I will ask some questions, hard hitting questions if needed. Like, I'll ask the PFL. I did a piece on the PFL like about a year ago. I was talking with one of their founders about the decisions to cancel the season, the roster cuts and everything. Like I'll do an interview like that. I'd say, but most of the time, like I'm just, I'm covering fights. I'm doing recaps or stuff. I'm previewing. I'm giving my opinions. I'd say that's a column you do. I mean, I do every week for FanSided. Cheap plug there, Mick Foley style.
I love FanSided. Plug away, brother.
I'd say MMA prospects, of course. I would say MMA prospects, of course. I'd say there's been a new series that's been starting on just looking at all the debuting UFC fighters and us giving our opinions. It's like you don't need to do the hard hitting stuff. It takes. I was gonna say you don't need to have those fight experience. Like I said, there's alternative options out there. If you do have, I'd say even if you do get physically involved, there is alternative options out there, and you don't need to be hard hitting to be. I'd say it's kind of weird when we say MMA journalists and MMA media. It's like, where's the definition of that? Like, who do you define as that?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's up to each person because obviously there's different, much like fighters, right? Do you have to have the knowledge of everything, the entire card of what happened in Pride 1 or King of Pancreas, 27 or whatever? Like that. I mean, that's, to me, I think it's like a similar type of scenario, right? So with that all being said, there's many reasons why people get into, whether it be on the fighting side, whether it be on the commentating side, whether it be the photography side or the column side, or you know what have you. There's different reasons why, right? So I think that's defined by each person because I mean, Luke Thomas said it best. One of his before he did his Showtime deal, he basically was like, "Hey, I'm not a journalist. Yes, I went to school for journalism and whatever, but like,
Same, yeah. I was
yeah, right, right. But good luck being a investigative journalist, right? And then you dig too deep, or a fighter might take offense, and not only do they not talk to you, right? Not only will they not talk to the outlet that you're with, but
right.
so too everybody on their manager's roster,
I,
everybody in their gym, you are blackballed. You
I say
know,
I think it's kind of weird because as a journalist, you're not supposed to worry about that stuff. You're supposed to worry about the truth. But it seems more and more now, as this game evolves, it seems like I say there are sites that don't rely on don't rely on the credentials, don't necessarily need to go to all the events. Like a couple of sites that I think in mind, like the Body Lock is one of them.
yeah,
Like they don't rely on credentials and they put out some, very good stuff over the past year that they've been around. I'll say, but some outlets, they do depend on those credentials, and it puts them in a really, really tough situation. I'd say this, and a lot of this, I think, is also part of the fact that MMA is just, relatively, it's still a young sport. Baseball's been around 100 plus years.
right.
Football's been around 100 years. MMA, mainstream MMA, like the only I think 1993. I go back to the first UFC. So what is that? Just over 25, just under 30 years. Like
Yes.
this is still a growing sport in
Mhm.
terms of fighters, in terms of covering the fights. It's crazy to think how the sport has come in 25, 30 years. What it's going to be like the next 25, 30 years.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. And speaking of percentage points, Alex thinks that Brock Lesnar is 100% ultimately responsible for all these wrestling fans crossing over to MMA. I will actually say that it was through the WWF that I found out about MMA, but it wasn't Brock Lesnar. No, no, no. It was a guy named, I don't know, Dan the B7. Dan the B7 stepping out into Shotgun Saturday Night in like 96, 97 with like flanked by Jim Cornette and three belts that were non WWE. I knew enough. Like I was in maybe like middle school, but I knew enough that Vince doesn't just let you walk onto TV, let alone with other titles that aren't his and what have you. And I mean, Jim Cornette was a mega heel. I was like, this person has to be somebody. And then, basically being told, by Jim Ross or he's a cage fighting champion or whatever, UFC. I'm like, what is this? And I tell my dad to go to the video store, and I mean, the rest is history. But
Yeah,
even what Dan Severn did, I mean, his first program was with Owen Hart. Now, there have been things that have been said over the years about pro wrestling and maybe being predetermined. I won't dare use the dreaded F word, but you know, it's been predetermined, right? And the thing about it, when I was a kid, yes, not all of the things that you see might be what would happen if you're in a fight. You don't run off the ropes. There are no ropes in a regular fight, right? But I knew that the hearts were real because Stu was a old school catch wrestler in the prairies of Canada. He had 12 kids, and essentially all of his boys ended up wrestling. All of the girls married wrestlers. There were times where Stu would stretch the heck out of baseball players and football players and bodybuilders. And even one time of the year during the Calgary Stampede, he would choke out a wrestling bear. So at that point, I was just like, I don't care about Spider-Man. I don't all that whatever. I want to be able to choke out a bear, right? So with that all being said, when Dan Severn comes, even Bret Hart would tell you that Owen was the better wrestler than he. Right? He could
yeah,
cut because Owen could cut the promo. Owen could work lucha. Owen could work the Japanese style, right? And do the high flying stuff in addition to all of that, right? And then when Dan Severn ragdolls Owen Hart, I was just like, everything I know is a lie. Everything I know.
I mean, not just that, but like around that same time, I think at the WWF in the Attitude Era, Ken Shamrock was around. He had come over,
Yes.
from the Lions Den in the old UFC days over to exactly. I remember he would do that every time he entered a ring. I thought it felt perfect for how crazy his persona is. But yeah, like Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn and all the stuff. Well, Ken Shamrock, not just he was not just WWE and the UFC. You talk about his MMA skills and his pro wrestling skills. You think goes back to as we were talking about before with Pancrase.
Yes.
All the work that he would do there, especially alongside the likes of Bas Rutten, and some of the Japanese pro wrestlers of today and of just the past 10 years. Some of them have dipped their toes into the MMA world. Especially when you think of
Nakamura?
yeah,
Nakamura? Hell yes, Nakamura.
I was gonna say, well, because I would say Antonio Inoki had brought over the I think it was the IGF it was called.
Yes,
I
the
remember,
Noki Genome Federation, good sir. Yes, of course.
I remember that when there was that whole controversy over Brock Lesnar, coincidentally enough, Brock Lesnar in his NJPW title reign. But yeah, I would say, but is ultimately Brock Lesnar responsible for a bunch of MMA people coming over? Wrestling people coming over to MMA. I will say there's probably a good percentage of them. I'd say, but there's a lot of, like I said, it was as much as I was a wrestling fan, it was Ultimate Fighter that brought me in. And we just said Shamrock and Severn were in the WWE in the '90s, and then Shamrock went into what was NWA TNA in the early 2000s. So
yeah.
one
One of the belts that Severn came, he had 3 belts, right?
NWA
Two of them were, one of them was the NWA title. So I'm just saying, Al Snow actually was a part of the walkout team, his quarter team, a young babyface Al Snow. Yeah, the head Al Snow is walking out Severn to the UFC because they were trading partners. Like, that's real.
Definitely. So I would say, yeah, there's definitely a lot of crossover. There's definitely a lot of crossover, but I don't know if all of it. I'll say a good maybe chunk of it is because of Brock Lesnar. I'll say, but there's some people who go old school back in the day to Shamrock and Severn.
Oh yeah. Oh, when you talk about Pancrase, that was Funaki and Minoru Suzuki, right? What were they? Pro wrestlers. What?
Kazushi Sakuraba.
The great.
When he went to UFC Japan and he won that tournament, what was his reason for entering? To show the power of pro wrestling.
Pro wrestling. Yep. Talk to Barnett. He is a pro wrestler that happens to be a fighter. Like that's it. The same thing with Baszler. Like they are like their fighting art, much like fighting arts of jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and whatever. Their fight art, their fight style that they're proficient in is pro wrestling. That's
the old UFC video games. Like I have Sudden Impact. I'm looking at the Sudden Impact on like my video game collections over there. One of the styles in the career mode to train is pro wrestling.
Pro wrestling, yes. So again, most people don't want to make that deal, and I always say, right, pro wrestling fans might not like MMA. MMA fans may not like pro wrestling,
but there is crossover.
But you talk to wrestlers, they love MMA. You talk to MMA fighters, they love pro wrestling.
And just to add a little triple threat in there, boxing. Boxing is boxing and boxing are like quintessential to MMA. And like boxing, having boxing and kickboxing experience, I say my theory on pro wrestling is, if you have the legit fight experience, it only benefits you in pro wrestling. It's like, okay, how to, how to fight. Now let's teach you our style. Let's transition your style and flow it into our style to make you a great pro wrestler.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Billy Robinson, that's a name that doesn't get talked up enough, but I would love to see Billy Robinson, in his prime versus, maybe a Dean Lister, right? Talk about grappling when grappling, and that's it. And for a guy Billy Robinson's size, there's no to do what he does. Like, it's just, I mean, there's Johnny Saint, right? But Johnny Saint was a slimmer man, right? I mean, Billy Robinson was doing cartwheel flips into the hip tosses at like 240. 240. Like, come on, dude. And again, they talk about senseis and whatever. If you were going to go that route and definition, well, I mean, Billy Robinson is both Baszler and Barnett's sensei, along with Sakuraba. So, just saying.
Definitely.
Or this guy, Carl Gotch.
Carl Gotch, yes.
Carl Gotch. How about that?
Shout out Bloodsport, by the way.
Yes, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport at bloodsport.watch. The 5th incarnation happening this Saturday. Order it. And you can, literally for less than $40, you can get both the previous Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 4 as well as the upcoming Bloodsport 5, headlined by none other than Davies Boy Smith Jr. Yes, the son of the British Bulldog, against former WWE and former AEW champion Jon Moxley. So, yeah.
It's insane. Can't wait.
I can't. Oh, literally, Cal Jack, talk about pro wrestling and MMA and all that jazz. Cal Jack's father actually has amateur wrestling wins over Gary Albright and Dr. Death Steve Williams.
God.
Right? And again, him winning at Bloodsport was him knocking out, because that's all you can do. Knockout and submission, right?
Mm-hmm.
He literally threw a motherfucker against the wall. That was his knockout. Shout out to Cal Jack.
I can't wait for the day. Like, I know we've seen slam KOs in the UFC, and we've seen submissions, pass outs with the, like a choke against the wall. I can't wait for the day there's somebody actually knocks out their opponent by throwing them against the cage. That would be insane.
I wouldn't doubt it, because I didn't know, there's never going to be a DDT in MMA, right? And leave it to Gustavo Lopez. I forgot he was facing former Combate champion Gustavo Lopez.
I was just gonna say, this was in Combate, wasn't it?
Well, no, it was Gustavo Lopez. It was his UFC debut, and he was facing this Eastern European wrestler guy or whatever, right? And to thwart his takedown, he kind of grabbed him like that, and it looked like a tornado DDT. I literally replayed that, shot it on my Instagram, and I tagged Chavo Guerrero, and I'm like, "Yo, it's your move," and he replied. So I'm just saying.
Oh, was it Marab?
Yes, Marab. Yes, Davashili or something or whatever. Yeah.
Marab Davashili. I'm glad I'm glad I have my technology on standby. I always doing my own work.
Yeah, that was it. But there was a point where Marab went for a takedown, and Gustavo Lopez just kind of went like that. And it was a tornado DDT.
I remember, I don't know the details of this fight, but it's so viral, this clip, where I think it's an amateur fight, where it's one guy, I guess, he's in pain or whatever, so he's down on his stomach, and the other fighter grabs each leg and pulls off the wall. Boston Grab, the walls of Jericho.
Yes.
Got the win.
Yes. And again, that's it. You put a Boston Crab on somebody. You put a full Nelson on somebody. Oh, that's a Shigeri.
I actually have seen. Okay, so there was this video. These rare submission compilations you see on YouTube. I'd say there's one I remember watching. I can never find this video again. It seems gone. But it was 6 rare submissions, and one of them, I'd say it was nowhere near here. It was somewhere, overseas on the Eastern Hemisphere. I don't know what promotion or anything. I don't remember the details. I just remember the bottom fighter was on his stomach. The other fighter was on top of him in top control. And you can hear the coaches, calling out instructions and everything. And then all of a sudden, the fighter on top catches the guy in a full Nelson. And you hear the guy on the bottom, breathing heavily, when you're in pain. And he taps him out. What? A full Nelson.
A full Nelson. And again, that's a finish anywhere. So you can 100 super kicks all you want, kids. You get 450 flash, kids. But again, that's a finish. A full Nelson is a finish. Legit AF.
I don't remember. I'd say I don't exactly remember the detail, but wasn't
MMA
there?
on point. It's a MMA on point. That's the clip. I
As I
know.
said, there's somebody who I think finished a fight with a sidekick that was like the sweet chin music somewhere.
Yes, that was Christopher Curtis on the Dana White Contender Series, and this is why I do not like the Dana White Contender Series, because Christopher Curtis, who's now in the PFL, like breaks his hand literally seconds into the fight, right?
Right.
But still with a will to win, which is, again, whether you're pro wrestling, MMA, whatever, you want the will to win. You want to show that you have the will to win. But with a broken hand, he literally super kicks his opponent, right? On his non-dominant side, super kicks his opponent, KOs him, and for whatever reason, he doesn't get a contract. What are we doing?
Some of this, it seems like every year there's one fighter that gets, I'd say that doesn't get the nod, and it just baffles everybody. I think because I think last year was Burchak.
Yes.
Who that happened to him, and I just remember the outrage already. I just remember like looking at my TV screen, like my head, like, are you kidding me?
I secretly think that Dana is trolling us. Like, that's his time to troll us, and we're like, oh, what does my Twitter timeline say? Okay, we're not picking them. Like, that's I honestly believe that. Like, I'm just saying, until somebody proves me different, that's what I think.
Nah, I don't blame you. It's not, sometimes the decisions are like absolutely baffling. I mean, I remember, going for a takedown in the last 10 seconds of a fight when you could have finished. I mean, yes, as stupid as that is, I don't know if it's exactly worth a robbing of a contract. I'm very certain you know which fighter in particular I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were not going to name any names, but yes, we know who you are.
I was gonna say the real ones out there know which one we're talking about. It's only been repeated 1,000 times over.
Only. And yes, the Ren of Podium Sports says the world of sports media is a lot harder than people think it is.
I was just gonna say, okay, so I was gonna say, if you want me to be honest, I'd say the stress of this industry sometimes. I mentioned it before, like about all the negativity, everything. The stress of this industry can sometimes be a freaking killer. Mm-hmm. I mean, worrying about deadlines, worrying about, I'd say that this is not a place. I'd say this is not an industry where you earn a lot of money. So I mean, like I'm working a full-time job on the side, so sometimes combine the normal working hours, a normal 9 to 5, plus the stuff here on weekends, it's a killer and it wears on you. Yeah, I'll say, and especially like, there's a couple of sites there, like we're doing Empty the Bench, the sports podcast, which by the way, if I can do another cheap plug, ETV Sports, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we're live every weekend, every Saturday around 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live. We use StreamYard actually, so that's why I was very familiar with everything. But yeah, basically, like, sometimes this industry gets to you. Sometimes it really freaking does. Sometimes you're questioning a lot about yourself and whether exactly, you can make it or if you want to go on, if it's all worth the stress. That's why, like especially as of late, I've just, like we were talking before we went live, like at some point I just say, F it. I'm just going to have fun with this. I say, even if I lessen my workload or like some weeks I increase my workload, like, I'm just going to have fun with this. Like if I make the big time, great. And if not, I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to ride this out for as long as I can go.
No, 100%. And sometimes it's enjoying the ride. Speaking of, Alex says, dude, Adam, do you know I edit, right? No, I don't. Well, thank you for clarifying, because I might hit you up in the DMs for sure. But he also says, what is the hardest take of being a sports journalist? Is it the story that you're covering, the fans' outlash, the fighter's not giving you an interview, landing the gig, make it in the field? Because, there's so many...
the hardest part of being it. I would probably have to say the last one. I'd probably have to say just getting into it. I mean, I'd say before I joined FanSided, like I said, I had fight sports, but like, I wasn't really getting my name on anything. So like until I figured out about FanSided and everything, you want me honest? Like before I found my full-time job, and it's not even like there's communication style stuff, but it's not full-on journalism.
Yeah.
I won't lie. Between like middle of grad school to that point where I did land that job, I applied for 500 plus positions,
Wow.
part-time, full-time, everything, and I landed nothing. I'd say in the middle of that, I landed FanSided, but I was always looking for something, in the full-time, like, I'd say like one of the big four networks or a
Yeah.
sports network like ESPN, Fox Sports, and everything. It's just it is tough. It is tough. Sometimes I'd say, and I guess sometimes I'm now appreciative, of sites like the ones I write for, because it's like, it is really hard to get into this industry sometimes, and it's even harder, especially now during the COVID era, to stay in this industry sometimes, especially when you see all the massive cuts. I mean, as like part of my recent round of like doubting myself and being depressed about this field that I just mentioned was because last week or 2 weeks ago when we had Bell Media cutting all those people at TSN and across the newsrooms across Canada. It's like, like really, like this is what we have to go through.
No, 100%, and it's that
Uh,
constant like stress of being on the chopping block.
right. I'd say the fans outlash I think would be second, because like I said, sometimes you can be the hardest worker in this industry and fans will still give you crap. They will give you crap, even if it's like, like let's say somebody in your in the same area as you, or somebody in the same company or whatever as you does something bad. It's like, because you're a part of that company, because you're a part of that site, you're representing that site, so it's like you eat some of the
The crap.
shit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, eating shit. That's kind of it.
Like,
Which Nate Red says it takes a special kind of crazy person to get in the cage or ring with a professional. Not many people
oh
in
yeah,
media.
I
Yeah,
give all the respect in the world to those fighters, for doing that, because I like, even when I trained in it, it's like, would I exactly step into that ring or step into that cage? I don't know. I gotta psych myself up for that.
yeah, and a hearty bit of congratulations and pomp goes to one Nate Wren of Podium Sports, because he not only is a writer for Podium Sports and a litany of other things, but he also competes as a marathon runner, as well as competing in his first boxing match in Mexico, uh, just like last year, or early this year, one of the two.
Definitely. Well, first of all, Nate, keep it up. You're doing amazing stuff. But like he was saying, it takes a special kind of crazy. I give those fighters all that respect. Like, all I ask is now for that mutual thing. Like, respect us, we respect you, and let's make some good coverage out of it.
No, 100%. Now, Don McGuire of the Fighter's Voice, he says 17 years as a journalist, and some certain people need to pocket check themselves. 25 years as a photographer, I wouldn't created memories of having legends and champions in the sport
Oh,
if not for it.
I'd say he's not wrong. There are, I think you even mentioned it. I think you even mentioned it, that certain people in the sport kind of need to check themselves before they wreck themselves.
Yes, 1,000%. And he says, "Yeah, I'm loving learning wrestling. Thanks to Woods. Thank you, good
A
sir."
brilliant wrestling mind here.
Yeah, wait, anytime that I I feel like underdressed, right? I shouldn't be showing Don McGuire anything. He's done far more than I, right? Or even like, Rafa Esparza, Verbal Tap podcast, right? And he's like, he does WWE BJJ week every year around WrestleMania, where, people in jiu-jitsu basically pulling off WWE style move or pro wrestling style move in the confines of BJJ,
I
and
love it.
yes, and
I
it's
love the sound of
amazing.
that.
Yes, it is. In which, I mean, Josh Barnett is killing it with
Killing your
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport big.
100%. And again, here you go. You've got this concept, Bloodsport. GCW, Game Changer Wrestling, gives it to Matt Riddle, the first incarnation, and it's fucking phenomenal. It's tremendous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then Riddle gets signed to the WWE. So not that. And they get none other than the War Master Josh Barnett, former King of Pancrase, former UFC champion, former IWGP champion, in addition to being a New Japan commentator alongside Jim Ross, right? Meta Morris, grappling champion, trained with Billy Robinson, trained Shayna Baszler, trained Harry Smith, and for going on this Saturday's fifth incarnation of Bloodsport under Josh Barnett's watch, you couldn't have picked a better guy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And honestly, I don't know how much of a take it is. I don't know how good or bad of a take it is, but I think Bloodsport is doing much better on Josh Barnett than it was, when Matt Riddle first got it. Because I'd say not knocking Riddle, it's like, but Barnett, like, I think you had put it the best way before, that Josh Barnett is a wrestler with a fighter's, attitude, and it was a fighting experience. But Josh Barnett, I mean, like the professional wrestling experience, the UFC experience, the fact that he was a commentator for a New Japan before the end of the Axis deal, the fact that he's a commentator for MMA events, Josh Barnett, for as much of the controversies as he had inside the ring and inside the cage with all the drugs and everything, he's one of the best minds, when it comes to this. And it reminds me so much, I guess maybe because I'm wearing my Yankee shirt because it is spring training, pitchers and catchers report today. He reminds me of Alex Rodriguez in a way. It's like, he could have been great. I was great in the cage, but he has all those problems with, drugs, performance enhancers. But outside the cage, one of the best minds I think you will ever see when it comes to any of the combat sports.
Well, here's the fun thing, right? When you get going back to Cub Swanson, I hate to harp on it, but again,
it's the topic at hand.
It's the topic at hand, but it got me, right? I felt like the vampire with the stake in the heart, right?
I feel that.
But look at Barnett, right? Look at DC. Look at who else is Michael Bisping, right?
Yeah.
That's Angela Hill and a litany of others, right? Brian Stan when he was doing it, right? Those folks can engage in conversations outside of MMA, right? Outside the confines. They can pull in reference that aren't somebody's custody issues, John Anik. I mean, what? Right?
Did you see what I posted on Twitter after he mentioned that?
Please bring us abreast of it, and I will retweet it. I'm literally checking in the timeline.
Okay, hang on. I'll say, no, I'm trying to pull it up. So he brought up custody, and what's funny, I didn't hear it at first because I'm so focused on the fight at hand. And I'd say, so it doesn't must have passed me by, and then I see on Twitter because I looked at my phone and everything was no custody. Everyone was asking custody and everything. So I tweeted out that we're talking about custody battles, #, hashtag UFC 258. And tell me, do you remember this graphic?
Yes, Dominic and Ray. Oh my gosh, and
custody of Dominic ladder match.
Yes. Well, here's the deal. I mean, that is in infamy, not just because of the terms and conditions of what that match entailed, but also Eddie Guerrero, one of the greatest of all time, hanging on the ladder, and you're like, damn it, Vicky, because he damn near.
Where the fuck was Vicky?
Yeah, where the fuck was Vicky? And he's hanging, and she missed the cue. She Papa Shango'd the shit out of that custody match.
Oh my god!
I mean, but it is right. I mean, was that the was that the terms and condition? Dana, screw the $50,000 or whatever. The carrot that Dana angled is hey, I'll help you guys out with the custody hearings. Whoever wins.
Oh God,
that'd be great. That'd be great. In my mind, that's what happened. Especially as MMA Junkie talked about the locker room bonuses and whatever. I want to believe everything in my heart, in my soul, believes that just like Peter Thiel was funneling stuff to Hulk Hogan during his trial with Gawker, well, Dana White was funneling locker room money bonuses to whoever won that to help aid their custody battle. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. that's a theory. That's a fun theory to think about.
Oh, tinfoil hat all the way. I got it. It looks good. It looks damn good. See, Tom, this is what you got. This is what you got.
And now I can't help but think of it. So I'm like,
yes, insane. And Don McGuire wants to know your thoughts on Dana White going on
the other big story. The other big story this week.
Let's.
Well, first of all, I'll say I think this is big. You have to remember something. Dana White has a bias against Ariel Helwani as much as, it's the same network, as much as Ariel Helwani is an ESPN person and UFC is the UFC brand. Dana still hates Ariel, still holds a grudge over 2016 when he, ironically, we mentioned Lesnar, reported Brock Lesnar's return before the UFC can get it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in my opinion, on that first controversy, that original one, I mean, Ariel's a journalist. As far as we know, he did not break any rules. He just got a scoop and reported on it. That's journalism, my friend. Sorry, Dana. I know you a journalist, but that's the industry. So first of all, I think his bias had a lot to do with it. And was Ariel making it about himself? I mean, sometimes I think, ever since joining ESPN, his takes can sometimes delve into the stir, like you said. But if you remember, Ariel is he is Jewish. So it was kind of, I guess, a good perspective as someone of Jewish descent, to Jewish heritage to have, it was good to hear, from his side. It was good to have an open mind and listen to why he thought it was, as offensive as it was. So, I mean, Dana, I can't defend Dana on that. He was in the wrong. He was very in the wrong on that one.
Well, what's a crazy thing, right? Over the course of the year, where okay, so let's begin with COVID happens. Dana wants to run Tachi Palace, right?
I remember that. Yep.
Yep. So what happens is the higher ups at Disney, even though it was on tribal land, out there in Central California, in Lemoore, right? They still got Governor Newsom to put the kibosh on it, right? The heads up at Disney, right?
I would say, Newsom. I would say for the longest time, Newsom was very, I guess the word would be against, very apprehensive to sports going on. I remember thinking, oh man, if MLB starts, resumes play, if there somehow is a 2020 season, would, like all the California teams like the Dodgers, everything have to play somewhere else. I mean, the last couple of games in the regular season for the San Francisco 49ers, because of COVID situations over there, they had to play in Arizona for the last couple of home games. But I mean, I'll give Dana White this credit. Sometimes his aggressiveness, leads to some great things. And you know what? He was the first sport back, and the Cards during the COVID pandemic, were kind of a sense of normalcy, a sense of freedom, and a sense of, like they were good for the most part, very good Cards. Yeah. I'd say I guess sometimes Dana's aggressiveness rubs people the very wrong way.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about it, and Don says with ESPN, Dana had to eat crow with Helwani, this is fun, right? Because it's not fun, but when you just kind of go down the labyrinth that is the ESPN, UFC.
Dana has to put up with it because, like it or not, Ariel is the face of MMA media, has been the face of MMA media for what, like 10 years now? Maybe even more. At least. Like at that, the ESPN is going to want the most special talents in the media industry. I remember because him and Mark Raimondi, I remember when they were at MMA fighting.
Yeah.
And now the support staff, basically, like Casey, Jose Young, Alex Lee, like they've stepped up
Right.
as the main people ever since Ariel and Mark left.
Mm-hmm.
Luke Thomas too. Luke Thomas too. He was with
Luke.
before he left too.
Yeah.
That wasn't ESPN, albeit, but when he left as well. So,
which again, like I said, so Dana inks this deal with ESPN and ESPN Plus to exclusively put all of the events, right? Like he undercut. Here's the crazy thing about it. For those who were paying UFC Fight Pass, subscriptions around that time, he undercut his own fan base, right? Because I mean, the first kind of selling point with UFC Fight Pass was almost like the WWE Network. Not only were you going to get all of the cool stuff that what made you a fan, because we acquired Pride, we acquired WEC, Strikeforce,
right.
All of these.
But the difference was Fight Pass didn't offer the pay-per-views. You had to pay for that separately.
But what you got was pay-per-views literally 30 days after they aired, they would pop up on Fight Pass, right? And literally, it took them a month and a half, and they put the kibosh to that, right? Like they put the kibosh like literally a month and a half after they did that. I think it was like right around the Ronda Holly deal, whatever. They were just like, oh no, we're just gonna make money this way, right? Just on pay-per-view revenue, right? So, with that being said, then Dana, obviously the WME deal and what have you, but then they inked this deal with ESPN. And Dana, you got to remember, things like weight cutting, right, in North American MMA were because, like, the byproduct of Dana trying to get, and whoever else, behind him, were trying to get MMA legalized, right? State by state, whatever. So they had to borrow a lot of the things that came from amateur wrestling and boxing, and that was weight cutting. Theoretically speaking, there's no reason why you weigh in at 145 but you fight at 170. Like, is that really?
I understand why fighters do it, but I'm one who doesn't believe in it. Like, I was gonna say, it's kind of crazy. I guess that goes to the point that I believe it was Nate that said, like, all the crazy stuff that fighters have to do and the craziness to step into that cage is like, man, going through that kind of process, trying to cut like 25, 30 pounds in just such a short time, that's scary. Especially when you see what happens when the things go wrong and you see these fighters hospitalized, or they step on the scale and they're like shaking. I'd say one of the biggest, I know there was the one championship fighter who sadly passed away because of the weight cutting complications, but probably one of the scariest sights I remember seeing in terms of weight cutting, I believe was UFC. I think it was Sacramento in July 2019. It was Aspen Ladd when she stepped on there, and you could see like the panic on her face and how badly she looked. And it was like, that was terrifying.
Yeah. But again, so the weight cutting, especially in the instance of the UFC, is Dana's quest to become legitimate in the eyes of the people. It's almost like Vince McMahon, right? To get those big car commercials and what have you, right? So he gives everything, the cow and the milk, to ESPN because ESPN is the leader in sports, right?
And ESPN as a separate issue from MMA exclusively, but ESPN is kind of they are paying top dollar for sports content. You're seeing all the cuts going around with production people like us. It's all about, for them, the college football, the UFC, the NFL contracts, the MLB contracts, NBA contracts, so they, I'd say, so yeah, basically, like they will pay top dollar for everything. So Dana will give them what they want, basically, because you think of the platform ESPN has.
Right. And then even as $3.4 billion and what have you, Dana having the clout that he does and everything, he got put the kibosh by the execs at Disney, right? But then turns around and literally makes the most, I want to say this has probably been the most financially grossing
successful, yeah.
In UFC's history from July of 2020 all the way up until right now. And obviously there was like the 2 weeks that we did at the end of the year where we didn't have fights, maybe a week between July and November where there was like one fight card that we didn't have, but all the way up until present day with this card that's coming up, we've had it, right? And with ESPN paying to the tune of the effect of 250,000 pay-per-view buys paid is what
something like that,
right?
But like you said, the most financially, the last time I remember this amount of financial success, I think 2016 when we started the year with Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit. We had McGregor Diaz's rivalry and McGregor going for the 2 belts at the end, and all in the middle of that, the UFC right after UFC 200 getting sold for $4.2 billion.
Yeah. Which, funny enough, right? With all of that history and all of that whatever, he still has to put up with not just Ariel, but Chael Sonnen as well.
And I'd say, and to a lesser degree, because he's one of his own fighters, but he's still Ariel's co-host, Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, absolutely. But
but a less degree because Cormier is a company man. He is a company man.
Cormier is a company man. But again, do you think with all of the tweets the disparaging tweets that Dana has said, the sound bites post UFC fights here's a third one. So Ariel, Chael Sonnen, who's also doing Bellator, he's the smartest person alive, doing his own thing, doing ESPN, doing UFC and Bellator all at the same time with Submission Underground. You're the smartest man alive, good sir.
That's it. Chael is amazing.
She's amazing.
And he think about it, he should have been a WEC champion as well. I don't know why he didn't get awarded. No, I know why he didn't get awarded the middleweight title, but still, absolute BS reason why. Yes. Even if the fighter lost the fight on the fighter, he lost the title on the scale.
Here's the other one, Brock Okamoto. You remember?
Yes,
right. So Dana has 3 people that, if it not for ESPN, he has to deal with on a week-to-week, day-by-day basis. I'm sure, imagine being Dana, seeing one of those 3 basically on Fight Island, thinking that you could get away from all of the traditional media that you absolutely hate. And there. And even if they weren't on the island, guess what? Dana had to fly to Yas Island. Chael could just do it from his house.
Look how much we could do in COVID from our own homes. It's weird.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So that gives me kind of solace for everybody that gets crapped on by Dana. This is somebody who's so famously have said, "Hey, we're not having any women fight in the UFC." Blah blah blah. Right. Mm-hmm. Within 3 months, he has Ronda, right, and a title fight, right. There's now four divisions, and some of the top talent that MMA
4 divisions, and if I remember from the 255 post-fight conference, he said he was looking at atomweight. Now he said he wasn't sure if it's coming anytime soon, and maybe not with how long this COVID pandemic goes on for, but a UFC atomweight division? I think my interest is peaked. I kind of want to see that.
Oh, of course. There's so many. The Invicta, holdouts, the ones from one championship like that. Ooh, the dream matches at 105 are just but it's fun. Now, Don McGuire says, I disagree in terms of Helwani because he creates negative beef.
I'd say, that goes to something we did say. Now he's not, a halo around Angel Wings. He is guilty with some of the stuff that he says. Like I said, ever since he's gone to ESPN, sometimes he has said some stuff. It seems more to, stir the pot a little. Like he'll say a take, and I'm just like, what? Like I say, this one's a little more minor, but I remember when late last year, probably second half of last year, he was advocating for Garbrandt to get the flyweight title shot. I'm like, Davison Figueiredo as the champ now. Of course, he beat Joseph Benavidez, and Joe's been around the flyweight game for a long time, ever since the division was first created in the
Yeah.
UFC.
And even
Marin,
WEC, yeah.
yeah, Moreno, Perez, Pantoja. You got all these guys at flyweight. It's like, we were just advocating last year. Remember, hashtag save the flyweights. Now all of a sudden you want to give it to a freaking guy who's coming down from bantamweight.
Bantamweight,
Of as much of a star, star power as he could bring. I mean, Garbrandt. I mean, right now, obviously, he's dealing with all the COVID post-effect issues,
right.
but like in December, Figueiredo and Moreno have shown us, you can draw and you can have exciting fights at flyweights. You don't need somebody like Dillashaw coming down, putting EPO in his body and getting stripped of his bantamweight title just to try to make weight and then get knocked out in 32 seconds. You don't need Cody Garbrandt, who's coming off one win in his last like 4 fights, coming down just with that star power. Guys like Figueiredo, it's such a shame what the UFC did with Mighty Mouse, and the fact that Mighty Mouse, didn't get as much respect, because Mighty Mouse is probably one of the best fighters out there, arguably I'd say once George St. Pierre retired, he arguably was the GOAT alongside John Jones in that debate for best fighter on the planet. It's kind of a shame what's happened to him. I'm credit to him. He's streaming, he's doing video game streaming. He's in one championship. He's going to be fighting for the one flyweight title very soon. Credit to him.
Making the most money.
Yeah.
It's our career.
Like great for him. I'm just saying, for what he could have done more in the UFC, what he did do, he doesn't get enough respect, Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, agreed. And the massive hydration are the worst, absolutely. Which and Don wants to know. Actually, wait. Before we get there, Nate, he says, what are some of the worst things that you've had to deal with in your career, advance or otherwise?
I was gonna say. So I think I mentioned this before. Like, I haven't really done much events. Like I said, I've been with a friend who's done like amateur fights and stuff. I've been to the UFC 244 media days, but I haven't really, been invited to a card. Like, that's one of the things I want to do when 2022, 2023, hopefully this pandemic, finally we can put it behind us and we can finally start traveling with normalcy and stuff like that. Next time UFC comes to the Garden, I want to be there, with mic in hand, like cage side as they're fighting. Like, everyone talks about how like that, fighter's blood coming onto you, and it's kind of like a christening, a welcome into the
rite of passage.
I want that christening. It's scary to think, but it's like I kind of want that christening to happen. But but now I did mention the UFC 244, the very first press conference, which is Masvidal, Diaz, and Dana on the pier. Dealing with those kinds of, there was Helwani there, there was a couple of other pro people there. I was there. But then you have these different, I guess, blog site, like small site, local site, people. And it's just some of the questions they were asking were a little ridiculous. Like I had brought up before, how can you be a BMF if you're a vegan, to Nate Diaz? Like, I remember looking at the guy, or Dana, congratulating Dana and the Patriots on all of their success, or saying go Pats or something like that, asking, for a little handout. It's sometimes, like I said, I say, and I guess you can combine that with Helwani sometimes being a shitster. Sometimes, there are people in this media business, or people who get perceived as being in this media business, that make, the jobs for some hardworking people that much tougher, and it hurts their perception because they do some stupid shit.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, not so much stupid shit, but Don McGuire wants to know, what are your thoughts on Bellator?
All right, as I say, this is a great question. I'm excited. I'm going to be really honest. I know we had the deal with. Bellator had the deal with DAZN, which, by the way, I think that was an absolutely wasted opportunity by DAZN. They did little to nothing. It started great, in the beginning when you had, that 206 card that was exclusive, and you had the champ versus champ and the Grand Prix starting. The first Bellator events in Hawaii when they were exclusive on
Yes.
there. Like that, it started great, and then it just kind of fell off. I mean, I remember all the mockery like last year when in 2020 when they were airing like those because DAZN didn't have commercial breaks like they did on
Right.
Paramount Network. They had those little spots, where it was interviews with fighters, their backstories, or like what's on your Instagram page. You know those little side stuff that I'm talking about. And this was the same stuff they were airing in 2020 that they were airing in 2018 when the deal first happened. I'm like,
Yes.
you did not care. And the fact that the COVID pandemic came in and like knocked out all the events of like Bellator and boxing. I'll say I still have the zone for stuff like like next week when Canelo's gonna fight. Obviously, I'm gonna tune in, and when Canelo, pending he gets past Avenue, and he probably will. And Canelo and Billy Joe fight in May. I'm definitely going to have the zone on to watch that. But it feels kind of a waste to have the zone considering, the not just how they handled Bellator, but just the loss of everything that's going on for them. So the move to CBS Sports Network as much as it kind of was a disappointment, lessening the household products from Paramount Network and Zone, I thought it was a step in the right direction because, a bigger, as a kind of a more prestigious platform, and now they're in Showtime. I have said that, I want to see Bellator get to the point that reminds me of the Strikeforce days. And we talk about Scott Coker and talk about the fighters of today. I remember Strikeforce having a bunch of these guys, and it's like, it's having them on Showtime, I think it's going to be phenomenal. And especially because Showtime knows, like I just mentioned with the zone, the opposite. Showtime knows how to handle their shit, knows how to handle fight promotion and everything. And considering they have Showtime boxing,
Right.
there's going to be definitely a lot of cross promotion. I mean, Mauro Ranallo, he hasn't done a lot of commentating for Bellator since the pandemic happened, but he is the main play-by-play guy for Showtime boxing. I guarantee you, maybe there'll be one day where we have a Bellator and Showtime card. We'll have one on one night and one the very next night, or we'll have a back-to-back where maybe Mauro is commentating both of them. I think the only thing left now for Bellator, pending everything going well now, is, if they get to national, if they get to CBS, the main CBS channel. If that happened, I would be so excited for Bellator because Bellator has definitely step things up, when around 2016, 2017, when they said we're going to start going away from the gimmicks a lot and we're going to go more towards, the pure fighting. Like, I love the fact that they brought back the tournaments more in a Grand Prix format. Like, it's done really well. And now you've seen this move over the past year with the pandemic from the older fighters and the more gimmicky fighters to the young up and coming prospects from promotions, just like the UFC with promotions like the LFA, Titan, all them. Like,
Invicta too.
Invicta. I'd say Bellator has done, such a good job, and that it's just as long as the Showtime move happens, they could get to that next step where maybe like once a quarter they have a special on CBS. And if that happens, and as long as they don't do anything like the brawl in Nashville, which lost Strikeforce, that was the lasting image of Strikeforce on CBS. Thanks, Jason Mayhem Miller, for that one. Bellator's future is bright. I love the fact that Bellator's future is bright because it's an alternative product. Maybe they won't get to the level of the UFC, but the more promotions out there, the more choice for fans and more choice for fighters. More opportunities for our fighters. I love it. I love this move to Showtime for Bellator.
Well, you know what the whole deal was, right? With Bellator and the Paramount Network and all that jazz. Like, do you remember how that went down? So here's the thing. So Paramount Network, right? Because that's
Bellator is owned by Paramount.
Well, they're owned by Viacom, right? They bought Viacom from
As I say,
Bellator Viacom bought Bellator from Bjorn Rebney. Too many B's. That's what happened.
And then Bjorn Rebney, man, if you're Bjorn Rebney, I mean, just seeing how, everything has evolved without you, kind of disappointing for Bjorn.
Yeah, and then, but here's the funny thing. He's advocating for the Fighters Union. Like, you the one I don't know, like McDonald's, like, why you fat, dude? Like, guys, to you, man. Why do you make your fries dipped in bacon grease? What the hell? What are we doing? Ah, man. Yeah, so that's it. So basically, the move was always for Bellator to essentially move off of, what was, I mean, it was Spike TV, then the Paramount Network, right?
And I'll be honest, I think Bellator was kind of the only exciting thing that the Paramount Network really had outside of movies as of late.
But you know why?
Why?
Here's the secret that no one, and it's funny, even like the media people, which I'm like, oh, is that the outlet, their parent company is Viacom,
Right.
because they won't announce it. So what essentially was supposed to happen, right? Because remember, Spike TV, that used to be TNN, the Nashville network, right? Then it became the National Network and WWE and all that jazz. Then to Spike, right? And has been Spike for this whole time. Well, Viacom's deal was the Paramount Network to be, right? And we saw a little bit with the Waco miniseries, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, what they wanted to do was have Harvey Weinstein have original, not just shows, but movies exclusively on the Paramount Network.
And obviously, then...
Yes, that all happened. Yep. Big whoops, right? And then literally the only thing after, that they had shot under Weinstein's kind of auspices was Waco. And once that was done, they had no whatever. So they were basically like, I mean, at the behest of Bellator, because Bellator was the only original content outside of, and they couldn't even get like the reruns of stuff and, rehashing of stuff, because again, a lot of the money was locked up into the Weinstein stuff and all of that.
I mean, let's face it, they were airing outside of Bellator and outside of movies. What was the
Yellowstone?
Yeah,
that was the other one.
I was gonna say, outside of that, what was Paramount Network? It was just reruns of just airings of Cops and Bar Rescue and
right. But that was again like some of the holdovers from Spike TV before the rebranding. But that wasn't supposed to be. That was supposed to be Paramount for the Paramount Showcase. You were going to see Top Gun. You were going to see whatever. You were going to see, much like HBO Plus is doing first run. The theatrical releases on a channel. Well, the Paramount Network, and you saw it now during the Super Bowl. Well, the Paramount
Plus. I was actually thinking that the Bellator announcement a couple of days later, I thought they're going to Paramount Plus. It's going to be another subscription I'm going to have to pay for. The fact that it was Showtime, it was like, I'm so happy for Bellator. It was the right move. It was the right move, and I already have that. It's like, yes.
Yeah. But and that's the other thing about it, right? You move again. Showtime is another Viacom network, right? That has the built-in fan base. Just like here in LA, like who was blatant Rams and Chargers fans for like the 20 years that they were in, San Diego and St. Louis respectively. Like who's that? But apparently they were, and they're coming out like out of the woodwork. Same thing, right? Where Strikeforce was there. Right, Elite XC was there, so you've got people that know MMA on this channel. So you've got that. It's almost like AEW being on TNT after all of these years, right?
Yeah.
So you've got that. Then you've got the fact that yes, they have the Showtime boxing, where HBO kind of 86 boxing from there.
That made me very sad when they 86 boxing.
Oh like, really? My gosh, Max Kellerman's deal, Roy Jones. I mean, it breaks my heart. It definitely breaks my heart. Jim Lampley, my goodness, Jim Lampley's stuff on HBO, just like his version of the boxing version of like Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. Those are great, and they just said, we hate you.
Harold Letterman. Every time they would go to a scorecard, I always like, okay, Jim.
Yes. But so that's the thing, Bellator is going to be able to kind of build on people's natural viewing habits anyway for consuming combat sports, right?
Right. And they can go. and they can go on Paramount Plus, but it's just, Showtime should be the main outlet because of Showtime's history with fights and the growing opportunities that Bellator has right now. And it's like, if Bellator does things right, as long as things are going well in the pandemic and all the stuff that I said before, I think Bellator has the future is still very bright. Yeah, it was already bright, and now it's just getting brighter and brighter.
So much brighter. And their title belts are better than the UFC, I don't know, Dixie Paper Plate Golden Championship. I hate that thing.
I do miss the old belt.
Yes. Oh, here Errol tainted his career back in the Mayhem Diaz days. One could argue that. Absolutely.
I wasn't involved. I wasn't involved too much in the MMA media. Not a lull in the MMA media those days, but I wasn't exactly following it. But like I said, I was in high school, and at that time, I thought I was going to be a baseball commentator. I was just watching MMA to have fun.
There
for the love of the sport.
Yeah, for the love of it. Now, Don McGar wants to know, what are your thoughts on Bellator also reaching out to the Latino and African American communities?
I think honestly they do sometimes. I guess this goes into multiple perspectives. Sometimes they do a better job with this kind of stuff than the UFC does, especially when it comes to promoting talent. Like it seems like with the UFC, when they go into a new area, or they go to a place like China, Brazil, Russia, I mean, they'll throw fighters, from the native area around there. And it's like, yes, that's the smart thing, but it's just sometimes there's just not a lot of hype. Meanwhile, with Bellator, I think, they do a better job of hyping up their, younger, lesser known talents.
No, I agree 100%. And that, oh, good.
No, I was going to say there's, they just announced the brackets for the Bellator Light Heavyweight Grand Prix. And there was one name on there that, I wasn't as familiar with. Name slips my mind in the moment. I'm trying to look up the brackets right now, but basically, ever since they've basically announced it, I don't know how to pronounce this. Dovultsan Yagishmuradov. Yagishmuradov, I know is the last name. I don't know how to pronounce the first name. But basically, ever since it got announced, everyone knows the Ryan Bader, the Nemkovs, and the Phil Davises. It's like when you heard this name, it's like who? I think Bellator does a better job of hyping these talents up, and like when it comes to going into the Latino and African American communities, I think they're trying to do a more diverse kind of roster. And like I said, they're going for the most diverse roster. They're going for the younger roster. I think Bellator's positioning themselves into trying to be, a more worldly promotion than the UFC. Like I said, I don't know if they'll ever be that in terms of production and everything. The UFC will probably be the standard bearer for a longer time, but Bellator is what?
Bellator has entrance and Titantrons. Screw that. That's on par.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the UFC is always projected as the worldwide leader, like the WWE is always projected as the worldwide leader because they have all the connections and everything. But sometimes, there's these other promotions out there, the NJPWs of the world, the AEWs of the world, the Bellators in the world that are just sometimes a little more exciting than watching a UFC or a WWE card.
Yeah, I do concur, 100%. You get no disagreements from me, good sir. No, not at all. And Don McGuire says, I love the fact that Bellator is doing a Cinco de Mayo special.
Hey, I just brought up Canelo a little while ago, and that's one of the best things about Canelo. It's like you're always guaranteed 2 fights out of him because he'll always fight around Cinco de Mayo weekend and Mexican Independence Day weekend. And if you ever seen when there's a capacity crowd and he wins, you see how much pride that country has in Canelo Alvarez. And I think they're doing a great job here, of bringing in Guan. Well, the Guan Archer was already brought in, but, the fact that he's a champion now and they're trying to promote him as, a Spanish hero, basically.
And, Sergio Pettis.
Sergio Pettis as well, yeah.
Yeah, that he's got Latin descent. Don't let the Pettis name fool you. He's almost like Tony Ferguson in that way, where,
that's true.
Yeah, which and that is not the Cinco de Mayo. They might build it as that, but we know what it is, and I'm going to refute you, Don McGuire. That May 7th, That's my birthday. Bellator did that for me. So thank you, Stock Poker, for breaking a show on my birthday, headlined by a tremendous world title matchup between Sergio Pettis and, again, the reigning, defending bantamweight world champion Juan Desmet.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So again, thank you. You did that for me. I appreciate that. That is the Adam Woods card, not the Cinco de Mayo card, because it's 2 days late. If you wanted to do it in the middle of the day, like you did that Italian one, like 10 o'clock in the morning. Like,
I'm not necessarily a fan of those, but I mean, as long as most of us work from home, or still work from home, I mean, a little easier to do, a little easier to watch.
Absolutely. And then Nate Wren, in terms of a baseball question, have you ever seen anyone get ejected from baseball games?
Okay,
or any outlanders?
Okay, the answer is no, but one came close, and it was for the most stupidest thing I've ever seen in baseball. And I have watched this game since I have been born. Okay, so it is, I would say, so I'm covering, it's my senior year at a good old Rider University. I'm covering Rider baseball. I forget who they're playing. It's a Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference matchup. So it's it's a conference matchup. It's Rider versus one of the other schools, and the Rider's on the field. The pitch is thrown, and it's a strike. So now one of the other team's head coach comes out and starts arguing with the umpire. Now, if you follow baseball, most of the time, what do they say? If you argue strikes and balls, almost all the time, it's an automatic ejection. So what happens is like they're talking. I thought, okay, he's gonna get tossed. I'm getting ready. I'm the third man in the booth, so I had the color commentator and the play-by-play man. Like, let's prepare for a guy getting thrown out of the game. All of a sudden, they changed it to a ball. I had never seen that in Major League Baseball, in minor league baseball, in high school baseball. They actually changed a strike to a ball. And then the Rider head coach comes out and starts screaming like, because I'm kind of in agreement with it on commentary. Like, how do you do that? I actually used the "in all of my years" line. I had to drop that. In all my years of playing and watching this game, I have never seen a call as stupid as that, where a strike is actually overturned to a ball. I was like, good, he's gonna. Like the Rider coach is gonna get ejected, and I'm like, and if he does, I will say, good, give him your money's worth. Just let it out now, because this is stupid. Oh my god, it was so stupid. I have never seen that, and I haven't seen that since. So I don't understand how you overturn a strike to a ball, because I always thought the umpire's call was final. I mean, you can have, we can argue about a foul tip, but like, in terms of balls and strikes in baseball, when you're at the plate, the umpire's decision is final. So, this isn't UFC where we're instituting instant replay. And even then, the UFC can't seem to get that right. I remember going nuts in an editorial on Chris Tagnoni partially on the commission and partially on Chris Tagnoni for the 2 back-to-back weeks where he made a mistake, like in terms of either not using the replay or using the replay and then restarting the fight. It was just sometimes these commissions and the referees, man, they just can cause a headache.
Now, again, going back to Cub Swanson, if you want to do the three fights deal, well, I mean, let's do it for judging. But then you wouldn't get Herzog, right? You wouldn't get a litany of other people. So even that, it kind of falls by the wayside. So I'm just saying. So Cub, sorry I'm going all in on you, but it was absolutely
I was going to say, everything seems to go back to Cub.
Cub Swanson, Jesus. But again, when your wife refutes your own claim, that's where I'm like, oh. And you guys, again, paychecks come from the same company, and it's, it's fun. Again, I'm just saying. And Blake Romano says, hey to you,
Hi,
good
Blake.
sir. Hey, Blake. And he says that he disagrees. It is the Cinco de Mayo card. No, it's the Adam Woods card. So, yeah. And then I interviewed Archuleta for 30 minutes after the announcement.
I have
Very
never
cool.
gotten the chance to interview Archuleta. I would love to one day.
Yeah, I mean, those are dreams. Those are dreams. Which, speaking of dreams, Matt. So, Thomas, like, what is the goal for you? Here on out, because it's not just MMA, as you perfectly eloquently described that the deal was to be a baseball announcer, and you are essentially parlaying your love for baseball and all other sports outside of MMA in Empty the Bench. And it's funny that we were talking about the umpire and the coach and the whatever changing the strike to the ball, because you are the brain trust of Empty the Bench podcast.
I would say, I can't give all the credit. I also have to acknowledge my my co-creators and co-hosts, Nick Federa and Nick Morgeson. Yeah, so like there's just I don't know if you noticed. I think you kind of noticed. There's a lot of more talking heads seems to be the prevalence in sports media. Stephen A. Smiths of the world, the Colin Cowards of the world, over actual journalists and actual sports discussion. It's always the hot take, and hot takes aren't bad. It's just you can't have a hot take every single day, otherwise it's not hot. It's lukewarm. So basically, this show, will call people out for some stupid stuff. If stupidity arises, we'll call it out. But like our mission is to just have sports discussion. I'll say if I do have to compare it to a first take of sorts, my two co-hosts are the two loudmouths, so they're the Skip and the Stephen A, or the Nick Wright and who hosts the show with Nick Wright on Fox. But basically, I'm more the straight man. I tend to give facts. I tend to look at both sides of the picture. If they'll two are Skip and Stephen A, I'm freaking Molly. Or if they're Max Kellerman and Stephen A, I'm Charlie Caruso, because she's the one who does the.
Yes, she does.
She's so she occasionally hosts the show, but yeah. So basically, I want to have. I guess kind of all of what I'm doing is, like I said, if I don't ever get to where I want to get to, I want to at least have fun doing it, and kind of try to make things my own, because that's been my objective since trying to be in this ever since trying to be in this industry. I want to do I want something with my name on it. I want like a sports column or my own show, which I guess kind of goes hand in hand with Empty the Bench, because like we said, these days it's much easier to at least have your own show. As a breaking through into the industry and being a big star is harder, but sometimes the path can be a little easier. Even if it's just fake it till you make it. But it's like, I want to have something where, at the end of the day, it's mine. I can be proud to have it, be mine, and I'm fully responsible for it. I'll be responsible for all the great stuff that happens with it. And if I funk up, I take full responsibility. I want to have something like that. So I guess basically that's the end game. And I guess, because I've developed such a love for MMA ever since, from the Ultimate Fighter days to now, and the fact that this is what basically, like I was led to the dance by my love of writing and my love of sports, but MMA got me to the floor, got me to, at least where the direction that I want to go in. So it's like, if one day I have my own MMA show, or I do want to start, you had Nicole on last week, Nick Bosco.
Yeah, Nicole Bosco.
And she said that she was starting to try to do more interviews on her own YouTube channel, and that's kind of the direction I want to go, because who knows where that'll take me down the line. And like I said, if I don't ever get there, I'm at the point where I want to have my balance. I want to keep going what I'm doing, but I want to have fun while I'm doing it, because these are my passions, and the fact that I get to cover a sport that I love and be in an industry, albeit not full time, that I love, I'm happy.
No, and we're happy to have you, good sir. And again, more of us achieving what our dreams and goals and passions are. I think whether you're involved in sports or not, again, most of the people that weren't doing what they felt they should be doing was because of time, money, opportunity. Well, guess what? Over the last year, we've gotten a semblance of all three, right? We might not, right? So if you're not doing it at the end of this whole deal, how much more time, how much more money, how much more opportunity do you need, right? And
Right.
sometimes you kind of have to carve a niche all for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
Definitely.
And Don McGuire says, hit him up. So there you go. So there's a connection made, good sir. I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Don. And Nate Redden says, do you do voiceover work? Because I agree. Do you?
It's funny because I actually used to do college radio back in my undergrad days, so it's like it's weird. Like as much as I wanted to be on TV originally, it's like I hear my voice and it's kind of weird. Like I've always hated my voice, but I always hear my voice and I think maybe this is more in the radio direction. And like would I love to do some? I'd say I don't really do voiceover work. I would love to do some voiceover work. I'd say I did occasionally, like back in my college days, I would do like maybe an ad or two. Basically, I would do the in-game ads, when there was breaks in between the innings. But like full-on voiceover work, no. But if I ever got the opportunity, I'd love to do it.
Absolutely.
I never, count anything out.
It's just like pro wrestling. You never say
Never
no.
say
You
never.
never say never, right? And you never know where one gig an event can
We'll
take
see.
you. Yeah,
Amen.
there you go. And it makes us.
Just completing all that. Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Thomas, like you have done a lot of things and have had a lot of people, show interest and encourage you to not only professionally be who you are, but also personally be who you are. So, and I'm thankful for them because again, I've got a friend in Thomas Albano. So, again,
Absolutely.
let's get some shout outs out of the way for those folks that have helped you out along the way.
All right. Well, first of all, I think my parents did a tremendous job of raising me, so shout out to them. Shout out to all the teachers. Shout out to all the teachers that I've had along the way because I'd say even if they weren't in the communication field, like I always tried to show how studious I am and how hard worker I can be. So it's like I always try to get that level of respect. Because respect in this world goes both ways. So you gotta give respect if you want to get respect, and you gotta earn that respect. Shout out to 107.7 The Bronx in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. That was my college radio station. Shout out to Rider University, Hofstra University, my two schools where, my two colleges where I worked my butt off just to get my journalism degrees. Shout out FanSided. Well, shout out to Fight Sports, for first getting me, the basics of how to be, in this field. It was my first. I said it was my first big boy job, as they say. And shout out to Fanside and Amy Kaplan because, like I said, I wasn't really getting any name credit over at Fight Sports, but when I went to Fansided, it was kind of like I saw Fansided, I saw the application. I'm like, I think of Fansided, like a legitimate product because
Yeah.
I'd say they the national columns and everything for baseball and football. I saw the MMA section. I'm like, you know what? It wouldn't hurt. I've seen Amy's work. I know who she is. I'm like, I'll throw something out there. I was welcomed in with open arms, and I showed Amy what I can do. And like a month later, I was doing an interview with Bellator fighters, one of them being Big Country Roy Nelson. I'm like, how did I get this in 1 month? How was I covering? I was doing the fight because we did fight recaps. I was doing the recap. They're the main event of UFC 235. Like, how did I get this in 1 month? Like, and it's just I've hit the ground running, and I have barely stopped working. I between the full-time job that I got last year and all the stuff for FanSided and MMA prospects. Ever since this pandemic has started, like I've been looking for every opportunity that I can. Also, yeah, shout out to Michael Fidel, MMA prospects. That's not a money making site, but that's more of a love of the game because, they say with the sports, with baseball and baseball, basketball, and even with the MMA and even in wrestling when it comes to the indies, when the Mike Trouts of the world, when the John Joneses, Israel Adesanyas, LeBron Jameses of the world retire, the sports go on. there are new stars that are to be made. So it's just as important to give these, I guess, minor leaguers is the best word to call them, and prospects their due and their coverage, because you never know which of them are going to be the big guys at the end, big girls at the end, and getting those connections early to these, fighters and starting to follow them early on, it's going to be a lot worth it when one of those guys is holding up, one of these guys or girls are holding up a belt at the end. So shout out to them. Shout out to all my coworkers, all the friends I've made along the way. And even, I guess, a little shout out to haters, because I saw a video yesterday I posted on my Instagram story, and it was kind of a reflection on, this is going to sound silly, but a SpongeBob episode. I'm not sure if you remember the episode Pickles, where SpongeBob basically forgets the pickles, and then all of a sudden, he starts losing confidence in himself. And it's like, I say it's called "This SpongeBob Episode Will Gain Your Confidence Back," because it was talking about how, you are you, how you are you, and basically there's, so much that you can be good at, but you are a complete person, but at the end of the day, obviously there is something we all strive to, what makes us in life. We always strive to try to find that. And, sometimes your haters and your critics can be, you can be your harshest critic, but sometimes those critics can also be your biggest fans, because they're the ones who can keep you going in a way. So sometimes, you got to say screw it and smile and keep going in this field. So
No.
I've had a lot of help along the way, man. I'm so grateful for where I am. I'd say I know there's still more to go, but I'm glad of where I am and how far I've come.
No, as am I. You're tremendous. And Don McGuire says he pictured you as a swimsuit model. And our passions make us rich.
Our passions make us rich. I absolutely agree with. I think the swimsuit model, is he talking to me or is he talking to you?
I don't know, but tuck and roll is what I'm gonna say. And there you go. I mean, if that's what you're into, that's what you're into. Kudos, mazel tov, and all the jazz, right? I mean, whatever.
And one more plug. And obviously follow and everything on social media for ETB Sports, Empty the Bench, ETB Sports across all social medias, and make sure to subscribe to According to Woods, people. Please give this man his due.
You're too kind. Which I wish you had to get your plugs in, as the Mexican luchadors say, get your shit in, kid. But in Espanol, but mi Espanol is horrible. So, yeah. So I say,
let's get my shit in before it's time to go home.
Oh, before fucking Scott Steiner Frankenstein you out of your fucking boots. That's it. That's it.
FanSidedMMA. So you can actually, if you search T Albano, obviously all my stuff will come up. MMA prospects. It's MMA-prospects.com. Like I said, it's a passion project with me and a bunch of others in this industry, led by Michael Vidal, and as of late by Sean Bitter, who some of you in the Twitterverse may know as MMA Wizard. So go and follow MMA Prospects and FanSided, and Empty the Bench, as I said, and thank you to everybody who's, helped me along the way. Thank you, Don. And I would love to be back one of these days here on According to Woods. Okay. And, it's just, here's to the future. Let's see how far, like I said, my 5-year anniversary in MMA media is coming up. Let's see how much further we can go with this. And let's see how much further the sport of MMA can grow.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for being a part of my community, a tenured member. And you're dare I say it?
What?
A grizzled young veteran. Yes.
I say, are you talking about the beard, or are you talking about a play on words of grizzled young vet?
Well, I was either going to go like the Good Brothers and Gallows and Anderson, or obviously the grizzled young vets of the NXT UK and NXT fame.
Clearly grizzled in more than ways than one here.
Oh, you should see the one with Barnett. I look like one side of my scrotum. Yeah, like it wasn't good. Thank you. Like, oh, when the War Master's beard is just so nice and, like it was literally glistening, and I looked like a half a nut. That's just what happened. But hey, that's shout out to War Master, man. But so again, Thomas, it's been great. Yeah, we're gonna explore this further. We're gonna have you back on some stuff, and I want to be on his return. No, okay, we'll make that happen.
Awesome,
You, me, and Dom.
Let's make it happen.
Hell yes, that's happening. So guys, even more. Hell, we might even do it on Tom's channel. Like let's just fucking do full on crossover here, there, everywhere. It's gonna be like ABC News.
Hey, you were there for my UFC 257 preview.
Yeah.
I didn't do one for 258, but hey, 259, we got a champ versus champ, 3 title fights. As long as everything sticks together with that card, hey, maybe I'd say just maybe I'll do something for Empty the Bench. Hey, maybe I'll throw a YouTube channel of my own. So we'll see.
Do it again. And when you do, let me know, because I'm going to subscribe, because Thomas Albano, you're one of the best people out here. You're one of the best things going, and I can't wait to see.
Too kind.
I don't believe in hyperbole or blowing smoke up anybody's chimney. But I mean, unless it's your type of thing, which blow away.
Thank you.
Sorry, I almost feel like sorry for Texas. Blow away, and never mind. But again, go ahead and follow him. He's one of the best follows and subscriptions you are. Follow Empty the Bench, follow MMA Prospects, follow FanSided. Great people doing great work. And again, you just saw one of them right here on According to Woods. And again, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I mean, Tom, you're subscribed, right?
Yep. I like the pages. I'm subscribed to the YouTube channel. Follow me along.
Yeah, damn right. Be like Tom. Literally be like Tom, right? Less like me, more like Tom. But if you don't believe my word for it or Tom's word for it, well, here's Pro Wrestler Zeta Zang to help convince you.
Hey, this is Zeta Zang. Make sure you